You know those moments when you hear someone speak and think, oh shit, I wish I was able to do something like that when I was 17. Well, that's my guest today, Alice Guy Gardner. She is a self-published author who started writing her first book at 14. Yes, 14. And now she's 17. She finished that book while she was switching schools and wrote it to feel as though you're having a conversation with a friend. Not like you're being lectured, not like some gurus trying to spout all their nonsense on you, but like you're having a conversation with a friend. Sky is so mature for her age. She's talking about stuff that I've only recently kind of figured out. I'm rocking on to 40. It's embarrassing. We talk about differences between finding time and making time, and why the hardest part of writing wasn't the hours that she had to put in, but the vulnerability she had to put in to writing, letting the walls down, so to speak. Putting in the messy, honest teenage experience on paper so someone else doesn't feel alone in their journey. She also shares a moment where she talks to a 35-year-old woman and a 9-year-old child, and how that shaped her writing and her mission that she is on now. She doesn't hold back, which just makes my admiration for her even more than it was previously before the conversation started, considering she's only 17. I mean, when I was 17, I was getting drunk on a park with my friends. Sorry, Mum. So yeah, hope you enjoy the conversation. Guy, is this love? So you've said, or I've heard you say, that this book is supposed to feel like a friend. So what is it you want people to understand about that? Why is it you wrote it in a way where you want it to feel like a friend?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking me that. I think that right now, all of the resources for young people are from people a lot older than us, who aren't experiencing all of the confusion and the excitement and the rushes of adrenaline and all the really big feelings we're feeling right now. And I'm also in that. So my book is supposed to feel like someone who's close to you, that understands and that isn't judging you, but can also take a foot out of the situation and help you reflect on what's really going on, so that you can look past just the big feelings and something that's happening in your life. Because I think that can be really hard for us right now, is when we feel so much when we're first entering relationships, it can be hard to look past it and think about what's really going on and what this really reflects about us and our lives. So my book obviously doesn't have all the answers, because I'm also young. I'm just about to turn 17. But it is a series of reflections that I hope will guide people who I know what they're going through.
Just for the audience, I think you did hear correctly when Sky said she's just about to turn 17. So when did you actually have this book published?
Just a couple weeks ago. It just got published, actually. We just launched it. It's been very exciting. But I started writing it when I was 14 years old, and I had just moved to Massachusetts. But there was a long 2-year editing and revision process, as I learned a lot about myself in the process.
Yeah, from my perspective, when I was 14, and I hope my mum's not listening to this, but I was getting drunk with my friends on the local park. Like some funk. I mean, writing a book at that age is just mind-blowing from my own personal experience. I mean, I've only just wrote a book and I'm nearly 40. So it's crazy. I mean, take us through that process, if you could, Sky, in terms of when did you find the time to write with school and everything else?
Honestly, I never found the time. I just made the time because, there wasn't any time. I was switching schools. I was switching to a school out in Connecticut. I'd been in California all my life. And it was a lot of just weekends on my own. We have a little bookstore in town. I would go and I'd sit in the cafe in the back and I'd just write all day. I don't know. I think there were a lot of days where I probably didn't want to write, because I had to be so honest about everything. But it was sort of just making the decision every day to get up and really just put myself on the paper. And some days I really didn't want to do that, but I got here. So I made it in the end.
I think something you just said then is such a good thing for people to take on board. Is I didn't find the time, I made the time. There's a lot of things I tell my clients is you don't really have a time issue, you've got a priority issue. So that's really, really good for our listeners to take on board there. If you feel like you're struggling with time, you're not got enough time during the day, it's a case of just making the time and kind of reprioritizing. This guy you're mentioning then, the days you didn't want to write, I'm assuming that kind of took quite a bit of internal talking to yourself around, and maybe just, I don't know whether you did this purposely or not, but a bit of mindset work for yourself just to keep you focused on that goal of getting that book written, right?
Yeah, I mean, even more difficult than the hours was finding the vulnerability every day to write, because I really had to write about my authentic emotional experience as a teenager who's still feeling all those feelings. I had I had to, I don't want to say give up because that sounds like a negative thing, but I had to let go of the walls that I would have preferred to keep up about my own life and all the decisions I've made. So that was probably harder than the time. But I think, well, first of all, I had a really great community supporting me all the time, which I'm really grateful for. But what really kept me going was my goal of supporting other people, because I knew that if it was this hard for me to write with all of these feelings, it's so much harder to just experience it and not know what's going on, you know? So even when I didn't want to write and I didn't want to be vulnerable, I just had to think about what my goal was every single day.
And what's the kind of reception been like from your friends and your close friends at school? It's crazy to
Really,
say that.
really good.
That's good.
Yeah, no, I know. And when I first told my friends, a lot of them were like, "What?" I had one of my friends call me Cupid for a while. He sort of thought I was kidding, and then I handed him the book, and he was like, "Oh, you really did that?" I was like, "Yeah," but it was good, you know. I actually, a lot of my close friends bought the book recently, and they were impressed with me as their friend, you know. And I think a lot of these people in my life, I've already been talking to them about their experiences all year, and so they were very motivating for me. So it's been really good. The audience, my audience, has also gone into people above the age of 25, above the age of 30, and that's felt great too, to know that it can really help people in every stage of their life. So
Absolutely.
it's been great.
Amazing. And what was it like when you were telling people? Did you maybe kind of keep it to yourself for a while, like you're writing a book? What was that like?
Yeah, it took me a while to tell people I was doing it. And if I'm being completely honest, I told my roommate, and then she told everyone. And that's how everyone knew about it. And I actually didn't want anyone to know that I was writing the book, because, like, these were the people who, I was with every day. And I was so worried that they would, like, see this very vulnerable part of me and then not like what they saw, you know? And that was difficult, but it ended up being for the better that she went and told everyone, because I had so many people tell me that they actually really needed a book. They really needed something that was a friend to them, because it's so hard to talk about feelings at this age, you know. So it was kind of thrust upon me, but all for the better.
All for the better, absolutely. And I suppose as well, with it being thrust upon you, your roommate, it kind of took that control away, because I imagine from my own personal experience about setting up my kind of own business and what have you, and writing my book, I didn't tell anyone for so long. I was like, nope, no one's going to know about this. I weren't even telling my partner what I was doing properly. She had an idea of what I was doing, but I just did not want to tell her, because there's that fear of being a failure in people's eyes, being judged, all that kind of thing. So there's such a fear around that, and you feel like it's such a risk. So I tip my cap to you for going ahead with it. It's, and although letting your friends, your roommate tell everybody, but for the better though, right? And I suppose it kind of helped you see who that community of support was for you as well.
Yeah, it did. It did. Honestly, if she hadn't went and told everyone, I don't think that the book could have been as good as it ended up being, because when that was sort of midway through my editing process, and once she told everyone and it was now this suddenly very real thing that everyone knew about, I started looking at the parts of the book where I had kind of withdrawn myself and tried to keep who I really was separate from my advice and what I was saying. And when she did that, it kind of made me force my fear of being really vulnerable to the people I was talking to. So I ended up changing a lot of things that I wrote because I realized that I was holding back from my actual experience, which was really just going to disservice anyone else who read the book. So it ended up being really helpful for me, even though it wouldn't have been my first choice.
Amazing. So as well as school, as well as writing books, you do a lot of work with like homeless youth charities. So tell us a little bit about that and what you kind of get up to, and also what the charities actually do as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I work pretty closely with a youth homeless foundation in San Diego, and it's a really, really fantastic spot. And it's this place where people can go to learn and get job opportunities and do art and get clothes and resources. It's called the YAC, and they've really taken off in the past few years. And what I've been doing there is I meet the kids that are there and I do some interviews and I learn about what needs are not being fulfilled. And then I spread those stories into the world. And I use the personal conversations I have with people there to sort of spread awareness of how similar we all are, in all honesty. It is honestly that simple. And then that ends up going into fundraisers. So it's a good process of conversation and getting to know the people that are there.
Tell us about a moment that kind of sparked that journey for you going down that route of helping those foundations.
Yeah, I mean, it probably all starts in how I grew up. I was in a multi-faith church, so we had several very different religions all in the same body. And at the same time, I was going to a Chinese school, so all my classes were in Chinese. We like wore the chipaos, like everything that was part of the culture I was immersed in. So, long story short, my childhood ended up being about seeing the similarities in different groups of people and trying to figure out how we were all connected, because I was part of so many different groups and I was so happy in each of them. I was always looking for ways that they intersected with different ones. So when the homeless population started growing in Los Angeles and that was coming to my attention, that people really wanted to have nothing to do with that and they just sort of wanted these people out of their way. I don't know, I just felt really called to it immediately, and I didn't think it was fair, which is like a first emotional reaction, but when I really thought about it, I realized that the reason no one wanted to interact with these people that they saw was because they saw them as separate and they didn't understand them or how they got to where they were or what any of their experiences were. And that was what created the fear, not just, like ignorance and everyone being a bad person. They just didn't understand the people that they were seeing around them. And I was always thinking about those kind of things. So it became a very personal matter for me, especially when it came to a lot of young people. And when I started going down to the community and speaking with people, I really realized that they were exactly like me. Like the first time I went down, I had a conversation with one of the girls there about her boyfriend who was annoying her because he wouldn't text her back, and I I thought it was so funny because I was thinking about something that just happened to me like that, and we ended up having this great conversation about like our boyfriends and like how we they weren't texting us the way we wanted to, and I just realized that like except for our circumstances, we were all going through the same thing, and there was nothing to be afraid of. you know? And so I just became really, I really wanted to bridge those gaps. So it became something really important to me.
Yeah, and I know from my own personal experience, so being from the UK and where I grew up, there wasn't too many homeless people around. But when I went to, so I did a bit of traveling in 2012, and so I was in the US for a year, and we basically just drove around the whole of the US, and the amount of homeless people I saw, it was heartbreaking. It was just blew my mind because I'd come from it having seen a handful of homeless people my whole life, basically, to then seeing them almost multiple times every day whilst we were traveling. It was so crazy, and just picking up on what you said there, where you just had a normal conversation. I found that my first reaction, as ignorant as it was, oh, what have they done? That was my kind of first reaction to it. But then when you just have a conversation with them, they're just normal, everyday people that something's just happened to them that's led them into that situation. So from my perspective, I was so ignorant back then, but I did get chatting with a couple of them, and I was like waiting at the lights to cross over. This was in Cleveland, it was, and I met this guy, and he offered to walk me around town and show me where things were and all this kind of stuff, and I was like, thank you so much. And then we were just chatting, and they're just normal people that's just had something bad happen that's led them into that situation. So that completely changed my perspective as well. But yeah, it was shocking when I first saw it. I couldn't believe it. And this was back in 2012. I don't know whether it's got worse or not. I don't know anything about the statistics or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. Honestly, the first time before I went down to the shelter for the first time on my drive down, I was nervous too. And I was with my father at the time, and I asked him if if I should be nervous, if I should be more aware of my surroundings. I did ask those questions too. And I think, I think, when we play this sort of blame game with each other, like, oh, like you don't care about these other people, then no one wants to help anyone because everyone feels upset and guilty. But in reality, when you don't understand another group of people or their situations, you usually think something negative about them just because you're trying to keep yourself safe in some way. But yeah, those conversations just change everything. And that honestly, that became sort of my philosophy for my book. And I thought about that a lot when I was writing because I think like there's a very big misconception that people my age don't know what love is and that we can't feel it to its fullest extent because of all the hormones and the adrenaline. But I think that in reality, we do feel that. We feel that very strongly, but we don't really have the tools to understand why we're feeling certain things or why something is making us really upset. And so my idea with the book was that we have this fear and not great relationships because we don't understand what's going on. So if you peel back the layers and you look at the core, whether that's something that you're insecure about or that happened in your childhood or some, you know, situation that you've been in that this is reminding you of, if you peel back the layers and find the core thing that's making you afraid, then you can understand your situation and have much better relationships with not just people around you, but with yourself. And I think that really became sort of my life philosophy that I really tried to drive home in the book.
Nice. Beautiful. You mentioned something a little while ago, that you grew up in a multi-faith church. Tell me about that. I have someone who is completely non-religious. When someone says multi-faith in one place, I'm like, didn't even know that was something that was possible to happen. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, no, I love talking about it. I don't personally align directly with any of the three religions of my church, but I take a lot of values of them. We had Christianity, Buddhism, and Hinduism all in the same body of the church. So we talked about Jesus, the Buddha, and Krishna is a good example. And I was raised hearing stories from, you wouldn't really call Buddhism a religion, but hearing stories from each of these these faiths. And it was definitely an interesting experience because we weren't focused on what was like the answer. We weren't focused on you have to live this way by God, or you have to act just like Jesus did, or you have to try to achieve what the Buddha did. It was more that we were educated on how to see the world and how to think about all the people in the world. And sort of the main idea was that we all were just part of the same, like, we all had the same intrinsic humanity. And those experiences and stories manifested in different ways, depending on whether you believed in science or one faith or another, one religion or another. And so what we ended up thinking about a lot was how can all of these different stories help us be better people, I guess is a good way to put it. I'd say we were just never really focused on what was the right answer. Our church is more focused on developing us as people.
That makes me a little jealous for my childhood, in terms of not having that. So I can see now you've explained that, I can see now how you've come to the position at 14 where you're starting to write a book. Whilst I was, like I say, getting drunk on the park with my friends because I never had anything like that. So I can see now, now you explain how you've kind of come to where you are currently. So tell us a little bit more about your journey from childhood to writing the book to how you see it moving forward, and what's your kind of mission, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, now that I reflect on it, I can sort of see the clear progression of things that led me to write the book. I mean, I was part of Chinese school. I ended up going to boarding school briefly in Shanghai, and I was part of multi-faith church. And at the same time, my parents were divorcing, and it ended up being a very messy experience for me. So I was very open-minded because of my just all the cultures I was growing up around, but I was always thinking about relationships because I was in the middle of one ending. And I didn't understand why it was happening, as most kids going through it do. And so that was sort of always in my mind and in my sphere of thought. And then when I turned about 13, I wrote a poem that was raising awareness for sexual assault in women. And it ended up getting a lot of really good feedback. And I won a few national awards for it. And I read it somewhere. And that was super exciting. But I think what I took away from that more, well, I'll share a story if you don't mind to of explain that experience for me. I had a woman who was about 35 reach out to me after the poem came out. And what she said to me was that it was the first time she ever felt like she was allowed to acknowledge her experience. And hearing that as someone so much younger really made me realize how much of a lack of conversations we were having about all of our experiences, and feeling that I could make that tiny change in someone's life. That was the first spark for me. That was the first moment that I realized I need to keep doing this, because as long as one person feels like they're seen and that they can, acknowledge the difficult things that happen in their life and feel less alone, then I have to keep doing that. We were connected to a elementary school, and there was a girl who was about 9, and she found me after my speaking because I was speaking at my school, and she told me that something had happened to her and that she didn't know that she was allowed to be upset about it. So I suddenly had a 9-year-old girl and a 35-year-old woman coming to me while I was right in the middle, telling me that they felt seen for the first time. And there was honestly no going back after that. So after that, I had my first relationship, my first committed relationship, and there were a lot of things that came up in that relationship for me and the person I was with that really made me realize for the first time that all the things I had experienced in my childhood with my parents was coming out directly into my relationships, and that it was going to keep coming out into my relationships if I didn't start thinking about it. So I started sort of writing these reflections down as all things were going on. And then I read it to my parents. I sort of confided in them and told them this was my experience. And, I didn't realize it at the time, but I guess my realizations were pretty good and pretty self-aware. And so they sent it to one of their friends who was a therapist, and she thought I took it off of Google, and I had to tell her that I wrote it myself. And so I sort of had someone acknowledge that I actually knew what I was doing. And I guess all of that just sort of amalgamated into me being told I should write a book. And I guess it wasn't really like it hit me at one point, like, now I'm going to write a book. It was just sort of, I just started writing a chapter one day, and then I didn't stop writing chapters. And then about a year later, it ended up being a very real thing that I was committing all of my weekends to. Yeah.
Amazing. I know when I started writing my book, it's just a little book about basically my love of going out into the mountains and how it helps me and what tools people can use to take it back into their life, their general day-to-day life, basically. But I didn't know how to articulate and express how it made me feel and the thought processes that were going through my head. So I know, like yourself, I just started writing and reflecting on things, and it just, although it didn't take me as long as yourself, because like I say, it was only tiny, so I did it in like 7 or 8 hours. So it could have been better, obviously. But yeah, that process itself was purely just for me to be able to better help myself articulate it when I'm on podcasts like this and my other podcasts that I've got as well. But just taking a step back, you mentioned you had, was it a 35-year-old woman coming to you and telling you that it was the first time she felt validated in the feelings, and a 9-year-old as well. I mean, how did their stories impact how you were writing? How did their stories impact how you were writing, or what your thoughts were about writing after hearing those stories?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I guess I haven't really thought about how those two people ended up coming into my writing. I guess I'm really thinking about that for the first time. I'm really glad you asked me that. I guess there was a certain level of boundaries for myself that I took down, and I wasn't just writing in the way I thought I had to write, because there were so many people experiencing so many different things around me at different points in their own life, that there wasn't going to be one perfect way for me to reach all of these people. And if I tried to fit how I was writing to just talk to one person and one demographic, it wouldn't have been helpful for everyone else. So I guess that also helped me to become just more vulnerable with how I was writing, because I was less focused on writing to one person. I just started writing what I felt was really important in the way that I felt was an important way to say it. And yeah, I guess that honestly gave me the freedom to be more authentic with what I was saying, because I didn't feel like I needed to just say it to one type of person, because everyone needed it.
So I suppose hearing that as well, and I don't want to dwell on it a little too much, but I suppose their stories had quite a bit of an impact away from just the writing as well, right? I'm assuming from just a personal perspective, had quite a big impact on you as well, I'm assuming.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it just really made me feel so much more passionate about the whole situation, because I realized that everyone felt a little alone in what they were going through, and that people from all ages were not feeling completely authentically supported in their experiences, And so for me, I guess writing my book targeted young people is to target the core of that, to get it to help people my age start thinking about things before we all grow up and get older and still haven't found a place to talk about it and to talk about all the things we're going through. So, I mean, obviously as a woman, it's things other women are going through are very important to me, but just everyone in general. Yeah, sort of a messy answer to that question, but it
No,
really
not
just
at all.
is just sort of the passion that it put into me.
Yeah, and these things can be quite hard to articulate as well. When you're trying to explain feelings and all that kind of thing, I'm useless. Honestly. But chapter 2 for you then, what does that look like? What's the journey from now, from here? Where are you heading in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I hope to talk about my book to as many people as possible, just like we're doing right now. And I guess my goal is to reach as many different audiences as I can. I'd love to talk to younger people who are ages like 9 to 11. I really want to talk to people my age who I know exactly what they're feeling right now. And if it's helpful for people older than me, I'd love to talk to them. So I guess there is no end in sight. It's just sort of seeing how many people I can talk to and how many people I can be helpful for, because I don't know the answers. And one of my personal goals is to look back at my book in 10 years and not know why I said a few things that I did, because I've realized that those aren't true for me anymore. So I still have a lot of learning to do, but however helpful I can be to different type of people right now is sort of just the goal with no end in sight.
Excellent. And so how can people get a hold of the book?
Yeah, I have a website, which is sky@charleysky.com, and we've got everything linked there with my book, which is now a bestseller on Amazon, which is very exciting news, especially so early in the process, but it's all right there in one spot.
Excellent. And how can people get in touch with you?
My email is also on my website, and it's also just sky@charleysky.com, and happy to take any emails all the time.
Excellent. Oh, quick question, actually, before we do wrap up. Sorry, I just thought of one more. How was the publishing process? Was it done through a publishing house, or did you self-publish? How was that process?
Yeah, I self-published. There were a few more rights to my book that I wanted, and I wanted a little bit more freedom in my experience. And it's been really good. I've had a lot of support and a lot of mentorship from other professionals in the industry, but it sort of feels like a free-for-all sometimes, because just doing as many things as possible and kind of hoping that it's going to hit the mark somewhere. But it's ended up working out. But there's been it's been a big learning process for sure, trying to figure out sort of what's going on and how all the algorithms work and all of those things that I wish I'd never have to think about, but I do, because that's just part of the process.
Ever again?
I mean, I'd prefer to just, stay in my corner and write, but, that doesn't really help get it out there as much as I wanted to.
Excellent. Well, Sky, thank you so much for coming on. For the listeners, we'll put all the links in the show notes.
Thank you for having me on and giving me a place to talk about this. I really appreciate it.
Have you ever felt like business should be more than numbers and deadlines? Like there's an entire world to explore beyond your office walls? Is adventure calling your name? I'm Ian Whitehead, and I'm your guide on Uncharted, the Entrepreneur's Adventure podcast, where I bring you real stories from visionary leaders who've built empires and climbed literal mountains. Because success isn't just about the bottom line, it's about the thrill of taking risks, the courage to pursue what truly lights you up, and the freedom to chart your own course. Each week we'll dive deep into the minds of boundary-pushing entrepreneurs and adventurers, revealing how they found purpose in the chaos and discovered their true north, both in business and beyond. So, if you're ready to break free from the ordinary, embrace bold action and inject a little more adventure into your life, welcome to Uncharted. Your journey starts here.